Hey guys, tonight we're taking a slow, grim step into the shadows beneath the stone towers and crooked spires of the medieval world. The firelight flickers on moss-covered walls. Iron bars groan in their hinges. Somewhere down there, water drips endlessly, a slow countdown you can't escape. You are descending into a dungeon, a real medieval dungeon, and, spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. This isn't the sort of place where prisoners waste away gracefully. No, it's damp, it stinks, and let's just say the mattress. Situation isn't what you'd call hospital grade. No one's coming with a hot meal or a change of linen. If you're lucky, you get a corner. If not, well, hopefully you enjoy the company of rats and your own thoughts so before you. Get comfortable, take a moment to like the video, and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I always love seeing how far these sleepy little trips reach. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking down stone steps now, and the air's already changing. It's cooler, but not in a refreshing way. It's the cold of wet stones that never dry. The deeper you go, the harder it is to breathe. The air's thick, almost sour. A faint tang of iron hovers in your nose. The torch you're carrying barely pushes the darkness back. Shadows crawl and flicker like they're alive. And then you hear it. The low, metallic rattle of chains ahead. No one talks in the dungeon. There's coughing, occasionally a scream, but mostly it's just the echo of your own boots and the sigh of ancient, damp stones. You're not the first to be led here. You definitely won't be the last. This place was carved beneath a keep sometime in the late Muissainacy, though. The stones you're brushing against might be even older. Some believe these early dungeons were adapted from Roman cellars or cisterns, repurposed when castles needed somewhere, well, out of the way to keep troublemakers. Historians still argue whether the earliest purpose-built dungeons were for long-term imprisonment or just holding cells before trial or execution. But let's be honest, the difference is academic when you're the one in the chains. You pass through a low arch, and there it is, your cell. It's barely tall enough to stand. The walls are damp to the touch, streaked with old soot, and something darker you don't want to think too hard about. No window. One rusted bucket in the corner. A patch of straw that crunches underfoot with a smell that's hard to describe without gagging a little. It's easy to imagine this as something temporary. A short stay, but prisoners could spend years here. There's a legend, maybe true, maybe just guard gossip, about a man who entered this very cell with dark hair and bright eyes, and left, stooped and white-haired, decades later. His crime? Allegedly, he corrected a baron's Latin. Not publicly, just in a letter. You sit, trying not to lean against anything. It doesn't help. The chill seeps into your bones. The torch sputters and goes out, and for the first time, you are truly alone. In the dark, in the silence. Just you, your thoughts, and the slow realization that medieval justice doesn't run on a timer. There are no visitation hours. No phone calls. You disappear until someone, if anyone, decides otherwise. Above your head, life continues. Nobles feast. Townsfolk gossip. Kings make decisions. But down here, time warps. A day feels like a week. A week feels like forever. You start counting water drips, pacing in the dark, pressing your ear to the door just to hear something. Anything. The dungeon wasn't always underground. In some castles, prisoners were kept in tower rooms, oubliettes, from the French. Oubli, meaning to forget. The idea being, once you're tossed in, you're forgotten. A vertical shaft with no door, just a grate above. No windows, no escape. In some cases, the bottom was lined with bones. Cozy, you feel the floor beneath you, again in Evan gritty. A flicker of movement by your foot, yep, rat. And judging by its size, probably not its first meal of prisoner leftovers. You pull your legs in, the chain on your ankle clinks softly. Welcome to the club. A few muffled voices drift through the wall. Could be guards. Could be another prisoner sobbing or laughing. The mind plays tricks in here. The longer you're in the dark, the more your brain starts inventing companions. Whole conversations. You might even see shapes in the stone, faces in the cracks. That's normal. That's healthy, compared to what comes later. And still, no one has told you why you're here. Maybe you actually did something. Maybe you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe someone needed a scapegoat. Remember, there's no paperwork trail. Just an accusation, a nod from a lord, and the sound of boots marching you downstairs. This is your world now. Stone, chains, rats, and the growing sense that the worst part isn't the pain, it's the waiting, the not knowing, and the sinking, feeling that the person who put you here has already forgotten you. The smell hits harder on day 2. Not like it wasn't bad before, but something changes once you've been in the dark long enough. Your nose adjusts, and suddenly every nuance of rot, mildew, and waste becomes its own symphony. You try breathing through your mouth, but that doesn't help, just invites the taste in. The floor beneath you feels warm in places, oddly enough. That's not comforting. It probably means something beneath is decaying, or maybe another prisoner relieved themselves in this exact spot, years ago, and the stone never quite forgot. You think about moving to the straw, but it's already damp, and you're pretty sure something's nesting in it. So, you sit on your haunches like a gargoyle, trying to pretend you're anywhere else. You hear scratching again. Not far. Rats. Not small ones either. Bold, confident rats. The kind that don't flinch at the sight of a human. In fact, they seem curious. You swat in the dark and feel something brush your hand. It hisses. You hiss back. Somehow, the rat wins. Medieval. Dungeons didn't have plumbing, obviously. Waste went in a bucket or didn't, if you were too weak or the bucket was already full. There's no regular cleaning crew. The filth accumulates. In some places, prisoners were kept half submerged in water from leaky walls and rising groundwater. There are accounts, admittedly second-hand, of dungeons where moss grew on skin and mushrooms sprouted from damp straw. Imagine that, becoming one with the cell, literally. Some castles built their prisons near the moat. Bad idea. When the moat overflowed, it filled the lower levels, carrying all sorts of souvenirs with it. There's a theory that one dungeon, under a French keep, doubled as a cesspit during sieges. Prisoners left there weren't tortured directly, they were just forgotten in the sludge. Historians still argue whether those reports are exaggerated, but even if they are, you can't shake the image, can you? The stones here don't reflect light, they absorb it. When a guard opens a door down the corridor, you get a brief silhouette, a flash of brightness that vanishes almost immediately, swallowed whole. It's like being inside a mouth, something ancient and hungry, slowly digesting you. And the insects. You forgot about those, didn't you? Lice, fleas, beetles, spiders. The damp is a paradise for crawling things. They bite, burrow, and sometimes just scurry across your skin to say hello. You scratch, but it only makes it worse. You wonder what diseases you've already caught. Medieval prisoners frequently suffered from scurvy, dysentery, trenchfoot, and things so casually labeled fever that it almost sounds cozy. It wasn't. Dungeon fever was often fatal, and no one was documenting symptoms in detail. If you collapsed, that was it. Someone might drag you out, or they might just toss another body on top. Your mouth is dry now. So dry. They haven't brought water since you arrived, and you're starting to feel it. Your tongue feels too big. Your head aches. You think about licking the wall, just to get moisture. You almost do. Then you remember what's probably on that wall, and your stomach turns. You try to sleep, but it's a joke. There's no silence here. Drips echo. Chains scrape. Somewhere, someone is whispering. Not words, just the rhythm of someone losing their grip. You envy them a little. They've passed some threshold you're still resisting. There's a hissing sound near your ear again. Rat? No, just the wind. Or maybe both. You can't tell anymore. You shift, and your shackles clink against the stone. You're lucky, in a sense. Some prisoners were kept in standing cells, spaces so tight you couldn't sit or lie down. Others were suspended from hooks by the wrists for hours, or even days. At least you have a floor. Sort of dot, and what's that dripping sound, anyway? It's not water. It's too thick, too slow. You remember something about blood being used as a threat hung in buckets near new prisoners to break their spirits. Probably just intimidation, right? Probably. The ceiling seems lower today. Maybe you're just slouching more. Or maybe the weight of the place is literally pressing down on you. You stare into the dark until your eyes play tricks, walls shifting, shadows moving. You swear the stones are pulsing, like breathing, like watching you. Your stomach growls again, loud, embarrassingly loud. Not that anyone's judging, but it feels like the dungeon is laughing at you. Hunger dulls everything, thoughts, reactions, even fear. You start picturing food, not good food, just any food. A crust of bread, an onion, even something you dropped on the floor and would have thrown away a week ago. You hear movement outside the door, footsteps, a key turning. Your heart races finally, something, but it's not a rescue, it's a bucket. And maybe, if you're lucky, a hunk of hard bread, dropped in the dirt. You reach for it like it's treasure. The guard doesn't speak, just shoves it through, then walks away. His footsteps echo back up the stairs. You stare at the bread for a long time. Do you eat it now? Save it? Is saving it even worth it? You eat half. It tastes like dust and iron. Your teeth hurt chewing it, but it's food. Sort of. The other half you hide under a rock near the corner, until a rat finds it 20 minutes later and runs off with it. Of course, you lie back on the stone, arms over your face. The worst part, you're starting to get used to it. The stink, the cold, the loneliness. That's what scares you. Not the pain, not the rats, not even the chains. Just the thought that this could become normal. By now, you've probably started asking yourself the big question. What did I do to end up here? And truth be told, it might not take much. You could have stolen a loaf of bread. You might have failed to pay a tax. Or maybe you just annoyed someone with a title, and now you're part of the stonework. The kinds of people tossed into medieval dungeons varied wildly. Sure, there were hardened criminals, murderers, arsonists, highwaymen. But more often, it was petty thieves, debtors, vagrants, or loudmouths who got on the wrong side of someone powerful. Let's not forget heretics, dissidents, and peasants with bad timing. One woman in 14th century England reportedly spent a week in a dungeon for baking substandard bread. Imagine doing time because your sourdough flopped. Even children weren't exempt. There are records granted, sparse, and mostly in dusty court rolls, of kids as young as 10 being jailed for minor thefts. Historians still argue whether those records reflect actual jail time or were just harsh threats. But either way, it's not exactly comforting. And then there are your cellmates. You might not be alone forever. Sooner or later, the guards might shove someone else in beside you. You hear their breathing first, then their smell. Then, eventually, their voice dash. Maybe, in most medieval dungeons, overcrowding was a real problem. Cells weren't designed with capacity in mind. 5 men might be shoved into a space meant for 2. Or 20 people might share a single long chamber with only one narrow slit in the wall for air. Disease didn't just spread, thrived. Some captives died from infection before their sentence even started. The other prisoners are a mixed bunch. The man curled up in the corner mutters to himself about chickens. The woman pacing back and forth smells of salt and tar, probably a sailor. You try asking them what they're in for. You get a grunt, or maybe a sob. Some people don't speak. After a while, not because they've gone mute, but because words lose meaning when no one listens. You hear a story pass between prisoners and horse whispers about a merchant who ended up in the dungeon after refusing to sell grain to a lord's steward at a discount. Supposedly, he held out for a year, ate bugs, traded favors for water, scratched a calendar into the stone with a chicken bone. Then one day, he just stopped counting. Some dungeons were attached to court systems. Others weren't. In cities, you might get dragged to a town jail where guards actually rotated shifts, kept records, and sometimes even cleaned well, relatively. But in a rural keep, out here under a petty baron's feet, this place isn't managed, it's abandoned. Someone probably tossed the key into the moat, and called it a day. You start noticing the little signs that tell you who your neighbors were, scratched names in the walls, carved prayers in Latin and French, a drawing of what looks like a dog or maybe a dragon next to a stick figure in chains, messages from the past, maybe warnings, maybe hopes. One says, "J'étais oublié, mais pas vrai." I was forgotten, but not broken. You repeat it quietly to yourself. It doesn't help. The guards don't talk to you unless they're in the mood, and when they are in the mood, it's usually the wrong one. You've noticed some of them enjoy spitting in the food they hand you. One likes to scrape his sword slowly against the bars, just to make the metal scream. They're not trying to get information. They're just passing time. There's an odd sort of caste system among the prisoners. The ones with connections, nobles, clergy, or the wealthy might get slightly better treatment. Their families send food, bribes, letters. A rich merchant might buy a soft mat or an extra candle. Meanwhile, the rest of you just sit in the dark, stewing in envy and filth. Sometimes the guards announce a name and drag someone out. You never know if it's for trial, execution, or something worse. Once, they came for a woman 3 cells down. She screamed the whole way up the stairs. No one's seen her since. The next day, they brought in someone new and dropped him into the same spot like she'd never existed. The jailers don't bother learning your names. They call you by numbers, or worse, by whatever you were wearing when they caught you. Red cloak, limp foot, spilled ale. You become your most embarrassing feature. You stopped being a person the second that cell doors shut. Some prisoners try to hold on to dignity. They recite poetry, say prayers, hum old songs. You've tried, too, but the words get thinner each day. You catch yourself forgetting the second verse, the melody, the rhythm. Your own voice starts to sound foreign, like it belongs to someone you used to know. You meet a man who claims he's here for espionage, says he was a spy for a rival duchy. He leans close and whispers that he smuggled secrets inside sheep carcasses. You think he's joking, until he describes in disturbing detail how the notes were sealed. He might be mad, or he might be brilliant. But either way, he's here now, another faded shadow behind bars. You hear rumors, always rumors, about one prisoner who actually got a pardon. Supposedly saved a bishop's life in battle, so they locked him up instead of hanging him. A kind of noble exile. You ask if he's still around. The others look at each other, then shrugged. Maybe, one mutters, but if he is, he ain't the same. You realize something sobering. No one knows how long they've been here. Time is measured in food scraps and new screams. You've stopped asking. Days blend. Weeks dissolve. No calendar, no sun, no end. And yet, somehow, you're still here. Still breathing. Still waiting. Whatever got you thrown down here may not have made sense. But the longer you stay, the less anything does. You hear footsteps again, heavier this time, more deliberate. That usually means one thing. The guards are bored and, when they're bored, they get creative. The cell door groans open, and torchlight cuts across the stone, momentarily blinding. You squint. 3 men step in. One carries something, a bundle of rope and iron. Another is already smirking. You're not told why. You're just told stand up. You hesitate, and suddenly you're yanked by the chain, hauled to your feet like a sack of flour. You're not going to like this part. But welcome to your orientation, the official medieval how things work around here. Spoiler, it involves a lot of pain. See, torture wasn't just about punishment, it was communication. A tool. It taught prisoners fear, demonstrated power to the public, and, in some cases, supposedly helped people confess, whether they were guilty or not. Well, that part wasn't exactly central. The guards drag you into a slightly larger chamber. The air is somehow colder here. There are iron hooks in the walls, old stains on the floor, and a collection of devices that range from crude to terrifying. Most of them don't have names, just reputations. You're placed in stocks first. Classic. A wooden frame clamps over your neck and wrists, forcing you to bend forward uncomfortably. They leave you there while they chat, casually nearby like you're part of the furniture. Your shoulders ache. Your legs start to cramp. Then one gives the back of your knees a lazy kick. You collapse forward, stuck, helpless, staring at a bloodstain you try not to imagine too hard. Torture varied widely from region to region. Some areas leaned heavily on psychological tormental, like the Tower dungeons of England, where prisoners might be left in total isolation for months. Others, especially in parts of Central Europe, embraced the full mechanical menu. Rack, thumbscrews, iron boots. The list goes on. Historians still argue whether the famous Iron Maiden was ever actually used during the medieval period, or if it was a later invention cooked up to sell horror to Victorian tourists. Either way, the rack was definitely. Real simple principle. Tie a person's arms and legs to a large wooden frame, then turn the wheels to stretch them apart. Slowly, creak by creak. You're not on the rack yet, but you're about to get a sampler. A metal device called the thumbikins is introduced with zero ceremony. It's like a clamp for your thumbs. Doesn't sound awful until they start twisting. Your breath catches. Your arms flail. One guard chuckles. The other tightens a bit more, then stops, not because he's merciful, but because his tea break is starting. Some torturers had specialties. One might be known for creative whipwork, another for water-based techniques, like dunking, which was a favorite when accusations involved witchcraft or heresy. Waterboarding, older than you'd think. Versions of it appear in records as early as the 13th century, though the terminology changes. The result is the same: near drowning on repeat. You're untied and shoved back into a corner. You're shaking, partly from pain, partly from the knowledge that this was just the beginning. They weren't trying to get anything out of you this time. It was more like a welcome mat. They call it the softening process. A few hours of discomfort, humiliation, exposure. The idea is that once you're sufficiently broken, you'll be easier to handle. More cooperative, less prone to biting when they shove moldy bread in your face. There's a man in the next cell who's been through this before. You catch a glimpse of his hand scarred, bent fingers missing at the second knuckle. He looks at you like you're a fresh loaf, untouched, but not for long. He tells you, between coughs, about another favorite technique, strap-a-do. It involves tying your hands behind your back, hoisting you up by the wrists, and then dropping you suddenly. Your shoulders dislocate almost instantly. No cutting, no bleeding, just unbearable pain and permanent damage. He laughs when you grimace. That was the polite version, he says. Then he goes quiet again. Just like that, there are unspoken rules among prisoners. You don't cry where others can hear. You don't scream unless it's really, really bad. And you definitely don't beg, not because it's frowned upon, just because it doesn't help. The guards like it. Some are even paid bonuses for creative techniques. Torture wasn't done every day. It was usually scheduled. No, really, like a weekly ritual. Tuesday was for thumbscrews. Friday, the wheel. The goal wasn't always to extract a confession on the spot, but to prepare the body for one. Once you were pliable, they'd bring you to court. They say pain is the fastest way to learn. If that's true, you're working on a doctorate. After what feels like forever, they drag you back to your cell. You collapse into the straw, and it doesn't matter anymore if something's living in it. You're too exhausted to care. Everything hurts, even your teeth. You stare at the ceiling, still hearing the rattle of chains in your ears, even though the room is quiet again. You wonder if there's a word for this kind of tired. Not just fatigue, but the soul kind, where your hope has gone a little thin, around the edges, and even rage feels like too much effort. But you're not alone. Not really. Somewhere in this dungeon, someone else is lying exactly like you, staring at stone, wishing their name was still remembered above ground. And maybe that's the worst part. That someday, your bones might still be here scratched into the corner of a cell, beneath a rock or buried under dust, and no one will know why, or care. By now, you're half curled against the wall, your joints sore, your mind frayed, and your skin bruised in at least 3 places you don't remember earning. But you do remember the faces of your guards, especially the one who seems to enjoy asking, still breathing. Like he's disappointed every time the answer is yes. This man has a name. You're sure of it. But in your world, he's just the jailer. He holds the keys. He decides who eats, who walks, who gets dragged upstairs for a conversation. And he's not alone. Most medieval dungeons weren't overseen by one person. They had jailers, wardens, turnkeys, and occasionally priests or scribes lurking about to observe, though their definition of intervention was usually prayer after the fact. But your jailer, he's the prototype, a scruffy, scarred man, with a smirk that says he's got nothing left to lose, and intends to make sure you don't, either. He's in a good mood today. That's bad news for you. With a little flourish, he bangs his baton on the bars, sings a tuneless chant, then points at you like you've just won a horrible prize. Time to stretch your legs, he says. You're not sure if he means that literally or as a threat, but it's not like you can decline. You're led into a different room this time. It's smaller, colder, and the light from a single candle flickers just enough to highlight the array of tools laid out neatly on a shelf, hooks, pincers, something that might once have been part of a fireplace but now has a more personal use. You'd compliment the display if you weren't so focused on your heartbeat, hammering behind your eyes. The jailer sits on a stool, cracks his knuckles, and starts talking not to you, but to himself. He reminisces about his past prisoners. There was a bishop who begged, a knight who didn't, a woman who told him jokes while he tightened the rope around her ankles. You're not sure if he's proud or just bored. Maybe both. Historians still debate how much of the cruelty in medieval prisons was official policy versus personal hobby. Torture wasn't always legal, it had to be authorized, usually in writing, but enforcement, loose at best. And even when it was legal, the rules were flexible. Some jailers became local legends. Others were loathed. There are stories, maybe. Myths about dungeon masters who held poetry contests with prisoners. One supposedly sang lullabies while branding people. Another kept a pet crow that pecked at the guilty and ignored the innocent. You sincerely hope those were just stories, but deep down, you're not so sure. Back in your own dungeon, your jailer has his own quirks. He whistles while he works. He collects teeth gnawed as trophies, he claims, but for luck. You see one tucked into his belt loop. You really, really hope it's not recent. His assistant arrives, thinner, quieter, maybe newer. He avoids eye contact. When he moves, his footsteps are careful. You wonder if he still flinches at screams, or if that wore off during week 2. They start with questions, soft ones, almost gentle. Who are your friends? What did you steal? Who paid you? When you give blank stares or genuine confusion, they repeat the questions, slower, as though you're hard of hearing rather than innocent. Then they shift tactics. Out comes the boot. A real device, not a metaphor. Wood planks around your leg, slowly tightened with wedges. The pressure builds. You grit your teeth. Somewhere in your mind, a voice whispers that screaming gives them power. So you don't. Not yet. You last longer than you expect, but not forever. No one does. Eventually, they sigh. One mutters, maybe tomorrow. You're dumped back into your cell, foot throbbing, eyes half closed. You want to sleep, but pain keeps tugging you awake. Your dreams come in flashes, now stone walls, dripping ceilings. The sound of rats chewing things they shouldn't. The jailer passes once more, before the torches are snuffed for the night. He hums a lullaby softly. It's almost tender. That somehow makes it worse. You wonder how a man becomes him. Does it start with one bad order, one forced choice? Or did he always like hurting people, and just found a job that paid for it? There's no answer, only the chill settling in your bones. But here's a twist. Not all jailers were monsters. Some were brutable. Some were bored enough to talk. Occasionally, one might even pass you an extra crust of bread, or whisper what was happening outside. Politics, plagues, wars, things that feel so far away now. There's a prisoner to cells down, an older man with a shredded tunic and a calm voice. He tells you he was once a jailer himself. Not in this castle, but one far away. He says the job wore him down like water on stone. The guilt came slow, then all at once. He tried to quit. They threw him in the same cell he used to guard. You don't know if he's lying, but you believe him. Maybe just because you need to. He offers a piece of advice. Never show them all your pain. Not because it spares you anything, but because it gives you something to own. They can take your name, he mutters, but not your silence. It's a nice thought. You'll try to remember it next time the boot comes out. For now, you curl into the straw again, ears ringing, stomach churning. And just before sleep takes you, you think you hear someone praying. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a whisper in the dark. It might be for you. Your dreams don't make sense anymore. They're a jumbled mix of memories, sounds, and strange distortions of light. You wake thinking you're outside only to find your arm twisted awkwardly against the wall, your leg pinned under your own weight, and the ever-present smell of mold wrapped around you like a blanket you can't shake off. You're hungry again, hungrier than yesterday. It's not a sharp pang anymore. It's more like a dull fog that settles over everything. You try to focus, but your thoughts stumble like drunkards in the dark. You hear your own heartbeat. You think it's saying something. Probably just feed me. Footsteps come again, slower this time. One set, not the usual group. When the cell door creaks open, you brace for more pain, but instead, something drops to the floor near you with a thunk. A wooden bowl, inside. What might once have been gruel. It's gray. It jiggles. It smells faintly of old socks. You eat it anyway. Meals in medieval dungeons weren't exactly curated. Bread, water, maybe beans or cabbage if you were somewhere. Unusually generous. Usually you were fed just enough to survive barely. If you were a noble, or your family had coin, you might receive outside food. If not, well, hope you enjoy moldy barley and the occasional boiled root. Sometimes, prisoners had to pay for food. Seriously, jailers might charge you for every crust and every drop of water. Couldn't pay. Tough. There are records from London's Newgate. Prison detailing itemized debt books for prisoners, including fees for cell space, meals, and even the chains themselves. Talk about adding insult to injury. You roll the bowl back and forth between your hands, savoring its warmth. It's the only warm thing you've touched in days. You're pretty sure it's the same bowl they used for the guy before you. You don't care. You're just glad it didn't have teeth marks on it, though you wouldn't be surprised. Somewhere down the corridor, someone throws up, then swears, then starts weeping. You stop listening. You stare at the wall and count the drip from a crack near the ceiling. You've started calling it the leak. It's your roommate now. You've become an expert on dungeon acoustics. Footsteps sound different on wet stone versus dry. Screams from the right echo twice. Screams from the left. They don't echo at all. That's how you know the wall is thicker there. You wonder what's behind it. More cells. A storage room. A forgotten prisoner from a forgotten war. A small insect crawls across your wrist. You brush it off with less disgust than you should. Maybe it'll visit someone else next. You overhear a guard joking with another about last week's roaches. Apparently, they tried starving a man for 5 days, then feeding him soup laced with ground beetle shells. He threw up on the warden's boots. The punchline: they made him lick them clean. You hate that you laughed. Just a little. But at this point, anything is comedy. Your stomach growls again. You look at your fingers. You'd bite one if it came off clean. Just kidding. Mostly there's a woman in the next cell who used to be a cook. You've only seen her once, when she was dragged in, limping. But she talks when the guards aren't around. Describes recipes in detail. Buttered fish, with garlic and thyme, roast duck, apple tarts. You think you'd cry if you saw an apple tart right now. She claims she poisoned a duke. Maybe on purpose, maybe not. She says it was bad oysters. Historians still argue whether food poisoning was commonly mistaken for intentional assassination in noble courts. One bad clam, and boom, someone's in a dungeon. You hear her whisper sometimes, not prayers menus. It's oddly soothing. The hunger does strange things. You start to feel floaty, like you're watching yourself from above. Your thoughts go on long walks without telling you where they're headed. You remember smells from childhood, the sound of your mother's voice, a dog you haven't thought about in years. It's almost peaceful until your stomach clenches again like a fist. There are worse hunger stories in here. A man named Tomas, for cells down, once gnawed through the sole of his shoe. Another claims to have caught and eaten a rat, boiled it in his own helmet. He won't say how he made fire. He just grins and says, "You'd be surprised what desperation teaches you. You're not there. Not yet. But you're closer than you'd like." Back in your straw nest, you try to imagine what food smells like. Real food, roast meat, fresh bread, cheese. You pretend the stone wall is a hearth, that the leak is soup bubbling, that your fingers are forks and your knees are a dining table. You close your eyes. Try to taste something that isn't rot or dust. Medieval cuisine wasn't always bad. For the wealthy, it was elaborate spiced meats, stews, sauces thick with almond milk and exotic flavors. But you're on the torture diet, low calorie, high despair. No fiber. You hear someone down the hall, muttering. "They've stopped eating altogether," said the rats whisper to them. You scoff until you remember hearing scratching. Last night that did sound oddly rhythmic. You wonder what would happen if you stopped eating. Would anyone care? Would anyone notice? Probably not. You could die in here, and it might take them weeks to clear the cell. If ever. Some prisoners did survive on nothing but water and luck. Others made friends with guards and managed to sneak food through bribes or manipulation. Some even wrote letters, if they were literate, to family or church officials, begging for assistance. A few of those letters survive today, smeared with desperation. Most didn't work. A few did. But those stories are rare. Eventually, your next meal arrives. This time, it's something new. A chunk of bread so stale, you could hammer nails with it. You soak it in the last inch of water from the bowl, until it softens just enough to chew without breaking a tooth. You eat in silence, listening to others doing the same. It's strange. There's something almost communal in it. The sound of chewing in the dark. The quiet clink of bowls. Like the world's saddest dinner party. You finish the last bite and stare at the empty bowl. It looks back at you like an old friend. You whisper, "See you tomorrow," and push it toward the door. Time no longer moves in hours or days. It moves in bowls. In drips. In the shuffle of footsteps down the corridor. You used to mark time by sunrise and meals. Now, you mark it by when the rats come out, when the guards change shifts, when your legs start cramping from lying too still. And now, it's interrogation time again. You hear your name, or at least something close to your name, called down the hall. That always means you're going somewhere unpleasant. You don't even argue anymore. You just stand, or try to. Your legs buckle a little. The pain in your foot hasn't gone away. Neither has the stiffness in your back from sleeping on cold stone. One guard chuckles as you lurch toward the door, like a baby deer on ice. This time, they're not taking you to the room, with the candle and the rack. No, this is the interrogation chamber. Capital I, capital C. You're starting to learn the layout of this underground labyrinth. And this room. This one is different. The walls are thicker. The air is hotter. There's something burning in the hearth, not for heat, but for effect. Iron rods. Branding tools. They glow softly in the corner, like sleeping dragons. The man waiting for you isn't your usual jailer. He's dressed differently, nicer, but not too nice. A wool coat, a little silver brooch. Hands. Folded. He looks like a bureaucrat who got bored of paperwork and wanted to play executioner. He doesn't introduce himself. He doesn't smile. He just gestures to the chair. It has no cushion, just wood and leather straps. You sit, because refusing isn't on the menu. He asks questions slowly, deliberately, not yelling. That's almost worse. The calmness, like you're two scholars having a disagreement over a dusty manuscript. Except you're the manuscript, and he's about to redact you. He wants names, reasons, confessions, details of a plot you don't. No, you say you don't know anything. He sighs. He says, "That's disappointing." Then he nods, and here come the assistants. Again, this time, they use something called the boot screw. A lovely invention where your legs are compressed by wooden slats and twisted until the bones protest audibly. You don't scream right away. You bite your tongue. You count numbers. You picture open skies, rivers, bird's end till the pain drowns. it all out. You scream. They pause. Not out of mercy, just to take notes. Or maybe to see if you'll say something useful while your nerves are on fire. You try giving them names. Real ones, fake ones, neighbors, random people from the market. A merchant you bought onions from 3 years ago. You're not even sure. They're listening. Historians still debate how useful torture really was for extracting accurate information. Most agree it wasn't very effective. People would confess to anything just to make it stop. Witchcraft, treason, talking to crows. One man allegedly confessed to turning into a wolf by moonlight. Another claimed to have flown to Rome on a broomstick, anything to end the agony. After a while, the questions stop. You're not sure how long you were in the chair, minutes, hours. Time collapses under pain. They drag you out like a sack of grain, and you barely register the corridor around you. You pass a door where someone else is screaming, then laughing, then screaming again. You're dumped into your cell. The door slams. The lock turns. And you're alone, except you're not. There's something else in here now. Not a person, not a rat, just something. It lives in the corners of your vision. It whispers when you try to sleep. It grows louder when you're too quiet. You don't know what it is, but you've given it a name. The weight is that creeping dread that this isn't punishment, it's life now. That there's no outside anymore. That no one remembers who you are. That the world you knew is gone, and all that's left is stone and rust, and the smell of your own skin. There are etchings on your wall you didn't notice before. Some are names. Some are tallies, days, months. One is a poem in bad Latin. Another says simply, I am bones now. You wonder, who carved that dot? The hunger has returned, of course. Along with thirst, the guard skipped your last bowl, maybe by accident, maybe on purpose. You call out once, twice. No response. You try not to panic. You lie very still and focus on breathing. Then, just before you drift into fevered sleep, the door clinks. A small hand pushes in a cup of water and a piece of meat. Actual meat. You blink, confused. It's not a guard. It's a boy, maybe 12. Probably an assistant. He doesn't say anything. Just gives a quick look, like he's not supposed to be here, then disappears. You hear the whisper of sandals, and he's gone. You eat, carefully, slowly. You don't trust it. But you're too hungry to argue with mystery beef. You think about the boy for a long time, why he came, who sent him. Maybe he was once like you. Maybe he still is. Then you wonder something darker. What if he's just learning the ropes? You curl up again. The pain in your legs is a dull throb. The iron taste in your mouth won't fade. You hum something, a song your mother used to sing. You don't know all the words, but it's better than the silence. Just before sleep claims you, you swear you hear the wall breathe. The cell smells different today. You can't quite place it at first. It's not the usual soup of sweat, mildew, and despair. No, this is sharper, smokier. There's a tang in the air that clings to the back of your throat like ashes. Then you hear it, faint shouts echoing through stone. Not screams this time. These are angry voices. Above you, outside. Distant, something is happening. You sit up too fast. Your vision blurs. Pain shoots down your spine. You steady yourself, lean back against the wall, and strain to listen. It's not clear, just noise and urgency and the low thrum of boots moving quickly across timber. A rebellion, a raid, someone escaping. Prisons weren't always stable fortresses. In fact, many were makeshift, improvised spaces carved into the undercrofts of castles or city walls. They could be surprisingly vulnerable. A siege could turn a dungeon into a tomb or a shortcut to freedom. There are tales of prisoners escaping through sewage grates, bribing lazy guards, or slipping into tunnels dug centuries earlier for entirely different purposes. Historians still argue whether the famous escape from Chateau d'If was real or just legend. But the idea is enough to make your blood stir. You shuffle toward the door and press your ear to the cold iron. Nothing, just your own breathing. Hours, maybe minutes dash pass. Then, suddenly, a new sound. Clang. Metal on metal. Close. Another clang. It's rhythmic, deliberate. You imagine someone trying to force open a gate, or maybe forge something. A weapon, a key. You whisper into the dark, "Is someone coming?" No one answers. Eventually the noise fades. The smell too. Whatever happened, it's over, for now. But the possibility sticks in your chest, like a glowing coal. Maybe, just maybe, the world above still moves. Maybe the castle isn't as invincible as it seems. But hope is a dangerous thing down here. It's a thin candle in a wet room. One wrong breath, and it's out. You slump back to your corner. Your legs are trembling again. The pain from the boot hasn't healed, and now your ankle's swollen. The straw pokes into the tender flesh around the bruises. You shift slowly, trying not to cry out. There's a scratch at the wall to your left. Not a rat this time. A pattern. Tap dash tap dot 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 pause. Dot dot tap dash tap dash tap dash tap dot you freeze. Then it comes again. Same rhythm. Morse code doesn't exist yet, but instinct knows communication when it hears it. You tap back. Anything. Doesn't matter what. A few seconds later, a reply. You can't see them. You don't know who they are. But there's someone just on the other side. You share no language, no face, no certainty. Just knocks in the dark. It's comforting. Over the next few days, or maybe weeks, you build a whole conversation in grunts, knocks, and footfalls. You invent rhythms for yes, no, food, hurt, and even quiet now. It's like learning to speak all over again. They teach you a new knock one, that means guard nearby. It saves you twice. Eventually you find out there a woman, or at least, they say they're a woman. Voice soft, accent strange. She claims she was a midwife, accused of sorcery, healing without a license, delivering twins during a solar eclipse. You ask, is that illegal now? She replies, only if the twins survived. You laugh too hard at that. It hurts, but it's worth it, she tells you, about the other prisoners. The ones too far to reach with knocks. One used to sing old soldier songs. Another spoke only to spiders. Another, she says, was a nobleman framed for treason. They beat him until he believed he had betrayed the crown. Eventually, he just stopped answering the door. Not dead, just gone. Medieval justice wasn't about fairness. It was about control. Prisons weren't rehabilitation centers. They were holding pens, punishment stations, or execution prep rooms. Some people were held for years without trial, just to keep them out of the way. The wealthy could often buy their way out. The poor, well, they were disposable. Sometimes quite literally. You remember hearing the guards talk about the pit. You assumed it was metaphorical. But now you're not so sure. One night, 2 guards walk past your cell. You pretend to sleep. One says, he'll go to the oubliette next week. The other snorts. Lucky. Out of sight, out of mind. They laugh. You don't feel lucky. An oubliette is a real thing. From the French oubliette, forget. A narrow vertical shaft, just wide enough to lower a person into. No stairs. No ladder. No exit. Just a hole in the ground, where you'd be dropped and left. Not executed, just forgotten. Historians still argue whether they were commonly used or more myth than method, but enough were documented to make you sweat. You dream about falling, not flying falling. Down and down into a shaft with no bottom. You wake up gasping, clinging to the damp straw like it's a rope, when you knock your usual rhythm to the woman on the other side. There's no reply. You try. Again. Nothing. You tap her name well, your nickname for her. Still nothing. You whisper into the wall. You there? Only silence. She doesn't answer the next day either. Or the day after that. And just like that, the wall goes back to being a wall. You sit for a long time, staring at the spot where the cracks run like veins. You count them. 1, 2, 7, 23. You don't know why. You imagine carving her name into the stone, but you don't have a tool. And even if you did, you're not sure you remember how letters are supposed to look. Eventually you do the only thing that makes sense. You knock once. Just once. Then you wait. The knock never comes back. You sit in the silence for what might be hours, curled around the cold ache in your chest. The worst part of dungeon life, you've come to learn, isn't the pain or the hunger, it's the disappearing. People vanish. In here, their voices go out like candles, and no one tells you why. No farewells, no explanations. One day, they're just gone, and the world doesn't blink. You wonder what they did with her. Your wall friend, was she taken to trial? Executed quietly? Thrown in the oubliette, like the guards joked? Maybe she escaped. It's the least likely answer, but the one you cling to. She deserves an escape. Someone should now the wall feels emptier than your stomach. You spend the next day or what you think is the next day just lying there, counting breaths. At some point, you start singing, very softly, a tune you don't quite remember. You hum the missing parts. It's awful. But its sound guards come and go. One kicks the bowl into your cell with a little more force than usual. Another doesn't speak at all. He just tosses a crust and keeps walking. You eat it, even though it's got something black growing on one edge. You scrape it off with your nail and try not to imagine it crawling back in. That night, the dungeon changes again. This time, the change arrives on a cart. You hear the wheels first, metal-rimmed rolling over uneven stone. Then the voices. Multiple loud men, joking and swearing. Someone coughs. Then, the unmistakable thud of new bodies being delivered. A fresh batch of prisoners. It's a strange feeling hearing someone else's misery come down the stairs. You're used to the routine, the quiet moaning, the occasional scream. But this is new fear. Sharp and panicked. These people aren't broken yet. You can tell by the way they curse. They get tossed into the empty cells. There are 3 of them. One is young. He keeps shouting about injustice and demanding to speak to someone important. The guards find this hilarious. Another is silent, possibly unconscious. The third is interesting. He hums, not like your tuneless mumbling. This man sings old tavern songs under his breath, tapping the rhythm against the stone. With what sounds like a ring, or maybe a nail. He doesn't seem scared. He sounds amused. You catch part of a lyric. To sail the seas and cheat the noose. A flask of rum, a lie, and truth. A pirate, or a bard, or just someone very good at pretending. Later, he calls out. Not to anyone specifics, to the corridor. Evening, neighbors. What do you reckon 3 days till they ask us who we sold to, or 5? Someone groans. In reply, he chuckles. You're a lively bunch. Don't let the rats get all your toes, eh? You find yourself smiling, just a little. Eventually, he speaks directly toward your cell. Hey, quiet one. You still breathing? You hesitate. Then you croak out, yeah. Good, let's keep it that way, shall we? He hums again, same tune. Something about the rhythm of it reaches into your chest and brushes the dust off your heart. It's a small thing, but it helps. You drift off to sleep that night, with music in your head for the first time in weeks, months. In the medieval world, music was more than entertainment. It was memory, it was resistance, it was prayer. People sang to survive, to mourn, to rebel. Even in the darkest prisons, songs slipped through cracks and bars. Sometimes they were forbidden. Sometimes they were tolerated. But they always meant something. The next day you speak to the humming man. He calls himself Remy. Says he was a smuggler, but never hurt anyone. Well, he adds, not on purpose. He was caught with letters he shouldn't have had. His story changes each time he tells it, but he's a good talker. You don't mind. Remy teaches you a game. You knock out riddles to each other, slowly, across the stone. Simple things at first. Then darker ones. I have a heart that doesn't beat. A mouth that doesn't eat. What am I? A well. The more of me you take, the more you leave behind. What am I? Footsteps. You forget hunger while you play. You forget the aching in your limbs. You forget, just for a moment, that the air still smells like damp iron and despair. It's amazing how human the dungeon becomes when you hear laughter again. But not everyone is amused. Later that week, one of the new arrivals, probably the Pulled out, he goes up the stairs, screaming. Down here, nobody says anything. We've learned. Screaming only makes the silence afterward worse. When he comes back, he doesn't scream anymore. That's the rhythm of this place. Arrival, panic, silence, removal, silence again. The dungeon breathes, embodies, and exhales ghosts. One night, Remy stops humming. You call out to him. Nothing. You knock. No reply. Then you hear a quiet voice, not his. A whisper. Another prisoner. Perhaps gone, it says. Took him at dawn. No torch. No boots. Just the priest. The priest. That means execution. Sometimes, they didn't bother dragging people up for a crowd. Sometimes they did it quietly, less spectacle, more cleanup. The priest was the last voice you heard before the blade, or the rope, or whatever local tradition demanded. You lie down on your straw, your chest heavy. You don't cry. You just stare at the ceiling and whisper the last line of Remy's song. A flask of rum, a lie, and truth. In the end, he was the only person in here who ever sang for you. Your world narrows again. No more songs, no more riddles. Just stone, breath, and the ache behind your eyes that never seems to leave. It's back to the basics, now scraping food from the sides of bowls, adjusting your limbs every few hours, to keep from going stiff, and listening to the dungeon breathe around you like a great, sleeping beast. But even in the stillness, things change. One morning, if it is morning, you wake to voices outside your cell, not guards, not prisoners. Something else. It's a group of visitors. You catch glimpses as they pass. Robes, high collars, gloved hands. Their footsteps are lighter than the guards, their voices clipped and formal. One of them pauses at your door. You don't move, just blink up at them. They stare back. Is this the one accused of harboring relics? Someone says behind the figure. The robed visitor doesn't respond. Then quietly, could be. They all start to look the same. And just like that, they move on, accused of harboring relics. You're not even sure what that means. But you've heard stories. In some regions, keeping certain religious objects, especially those not sanctioned by the dominant church, could land you in a dungeon, like this. Crosses, bones, ancient scrolls. Some were considered sacred, others heretical. All were political. Historians still argue how often such accusations were real versus fabricated. Sometimes a neighbor just wanted your land, or a merchant wanted less competition, or a local lord needed to look busy for the bishop. Whatever your charge is, no one's told you officially. You're just here. A few hours later, or maybe minutes, it's hard to tell, your door opens again. This time, it's the jailer. Not the one who hums or kicks bowls. The other one, the quiet one. He doesn't speak. He just gestures. You're being taken somewhere. Your legs barely hold you up, but you walk, slowly. Each step sends pain up your spine, but the sensation of movement, of walking a new hallway, almost feels like a gift. They lead you not to a torture chamber, but a chamber of stone with high windows. You blink at the sudden glow of gray daylight filtering through stained glass. For the first time in who knows how long, you can see color, real, unfiltered color. There's a desk, and a man behind it. He's writing something, quill scratching. Rhythmically, doesn't look up when you enter. Just says, sit. You sit. Eventually, he does look up. His face is expressionless, but his eyes are alert. Too alert. You've been held for 73 days, he says. Did you know that? You shake your head. Your mouth's too dry to answer out loud, he continues. Your charges are unclear. There's no official confession, no confirmed witnesses. Frankly, I'm not sure why you're still here. Your heart stutters. He taps the desk twice with his fingers. Unfortunately, without a confession or an official order of release, we can't legally free you. Nor can we proceed with an execution. You blink. So what happens now? He doesn't smile. We wait. Wait. For what? For someone to remember. For a piece of parchment to blow in on the wind. He leans back in his chair and studies you. You look better than most. That's a good sign. We may need to move you soon. The bishop is visiting next week. He doesn't like clutter. You're cluttered now. You're escorted back to your cell. The moment the door shuts behind you, it hits nothing has changed. They brought you out, made you hope, and now you're right back where you started. It was just another turn of the wheel. This is part of the system, too. A different kind of torture. Some dungeons, especially those attached to religious institutions, prided themselves on clean punishment, less blood, more soul-crushing. The Inquisition was particularly good at this lengthy interrogations, endless delays, and psychological pressure designed to make you break without ever drawing blood. You lie down, eyes open to the dark, and whisper to yourself, "I am not clutter. I am not clutter. I am not clutter." The next day, if that's what it is, you get a visitor, yes, a real one. He appears like a shadow behind your bars, cloaked, thin, clean. He smells of soap and herbs. You blink at him, trying to decide if he's real. He speaks gently. "I was asked to check on you." You stare. He kneels, reaches into his cloak, and slides something through the bars. A scrap of bread, fresh, still warm. You grab it like it's gold. It tastes like freedom. He watches you eat, says nothing. Then, as he stands to go, he adds quietly, "Not everyone in the world has forgotten you." And he's gone. You clutch. The memory of him the way a child clutches a bedtime story. Was he a priest, a noble, a spy? You don't know. You don't care. What matters is this: someone knows you're here. That night, the dungeon feels a little less suffocating. You don't sleep, but you rest. You hum one of Remy's songs under your breath, and for the first time in a long while, the walls don't feel quite as thick. Sleep comes in snatches now, a few minutes at a time, stretched thin over long, blank hours. But tonight, you slip into something deeper, almost a dream. It's soft and warm and smells like bread. You're in a kitchen. There's sunlight through a window. Someone laughs. Someone says your name. Then your eyes snap open. Back in the dark. The cold stone presses against your shoulder. A rat scurries across your toes. It takes you a full minute to remember where you are. Your breath catches in your throat. You sit up too fast, and the world spins. You've had worse mornings. Your first thought is, did that cloaked visitor mean it? That someone knows you're here? Your second thought is, does it even matter? Because once again, no one comes. No messages. No new scraps of food. Just the same clinking bowl. The same limp straw. The same sighing dampness in the walls. But your mind is more alert now. You've stopped dreaming about freedom. Now you dream about getting out. By any means. You start looking at your differently, the cracks in the floor. The rust on the lock. The width of the bars. The wobble in the hinge. That's new. You've started planning. Most medieval prisoners didn't escape. But a few did. There the legends whispered from one damp corner to the next. One monk supposedly dislocated both shoulders to squeeze through a drain. Another bribed every guard in sequence, passing notes under stale loaves of bread. One noblewoman is said to have faked death so convincingly. She was carried out with the corpses only, to sneak away once the cart hit open road. Historians still argue if these tales are real. But when you're underground with nothing but time and rot, even myths are worth memorizing. You begin collecting things. Nothing useful, yet just thoughts, ideas, mental sketches of the guard. Schedules, sounds of footsteps, which stones are loose, which guards are lazy. And you begin noticing things others don't. For instance, the rats always come in from the same hole near the far corner. You watch it one day. You reach toward it. It's small, but you could maybe widen it. It might lead nowhere, or everywhere. The bowl is another clue. It always lands in the same spot. A guard with a lazy throw. You shuffle your straw to that area. Listen to the sound of the bowl sliding. You calculate its weight, how hard it hits the floor. You begin thinking like an engineer, or a thief. Anything but a prisoner. One night, you hear a commotion in the hallway. Guards shouting, a clang, then a loud muffled boom. Stone dust rains from the ceiling, an explosion. You crawl to the bars and press your face between them. Smoke curls through the corridor. There are voices shouting orders, footsteps running, a scream. Then quiet, too quiet. Something's happened. You try to shout, "Hello? Is anyone?" But your voice breaks. You cough, wheezing. The dust stings your eyes. After a while, you hear someone moving outside your cell. You call out again, "Who's there?" A face appears, but not a guard. It's a man in rough wool, dirt-smeared, with a jagged scar across his temple. He stares at you like you're a problem he didn't expect to find. "Didn't think this wing was still in use," he mutters. You blink. "Are you with them?" He doesn't answer, just glances behind him, then back at you. "You got a name," you tell him. It sounds foreign in your mouth now, like you're borrowing it from someone else. He nods. "Stay low. If we get the gate open, follow the second tunnel left. Smells like fish. Means it leads to the docks." Then he vanishes. You don't know if it's real. Maybe the dust is getting to your brain. Maybe you imagined him. But now you're listening. Again, you hear the groan of iron shifting. The rush of distant air. Movement. Something's happening. Hours. You hear boots. Not the usual plodding guards. These are rushed, nervous top guards. Two guards stop outside your cell. One unlocks the door, on your feet. He barks. You hesitate. He grabs you by the collar and hauls you out like a sack of flour. Your legs barely move, but adrenaline kicks in. You're walking, no being dragged. Back through the corridor, past a toppled brazier, past a place where smoke still lingers. They take you to a small chamber with no windows, a bench, a table, a single torch on the wall. "Wait here," one says. They lock the door behind you. You sit. You breathe. You listen. After a long silence, the door opens again. A man walks in, not a guard. Not the same visitor from before, but dressed similarly. A scholar's robe, ink-stained fingers. He has a parchment tucked under one arm. He sits across from you, doesn't speak right away. Finally, he says your name was flagged in a report. They thought you were dead. You say nothing. There's been confusion, lost records, a fire in the archives. You were arrested under the wrong seal. You blink. He leans in. You're going to be moved. You open your mouth to ask where, but he raises a hand. Not out, not free, just somewhere. With better air. That night, you're taken from your cell. No chains this time. Just silence. The guards don't speak. They lead you up winding stairs, past torchlit halls, past rooms that smell like ink and lavender and soap, and then into a new cell. It has a window. Just a slit in the stone, barely wider than your palm. But you can see sky. Real sky. And for a brief moment only, a few seconds, you see a star. You collapse on the new straw. Still damp, still scratchy. But now, you know the sky is still up there, and that changes everything. You wake up to light. Faint, yes. Cold and distant, yes. But light nonetheless. It pours through the narrow slit in the stone. Just a slender beam slicing across the dust like a forgotten promise. You stare at it as if it might vanish. You don't blink. You hardly breathe. Because this is the first time in so long that you can see the sun. The new cell is hardly luxurious. The walls are still damp in places, and the straw still smells like old sweat. But the ceiling is higher. The air less stagnant. There's less mold. Fewer rats. No chains. It's like going from a grave to a monastery. You wonder why they moved you. Pity. A clerical error. That visitor with the bread pulling strings in the background. You don't know. You're not even sure you care. Because that sliver of sky has become your religion now. You inch closer to the window every day. Not because you think you can escape it. Because you can look out. It's angled badly. You can't see the ground. Just a patch of clouds. Sometimes birds. Once you thought you glimpsed a tower top in the far distance, its silhouette blurry, like a dream half remembered. You start giving names to the clouds. The big, grumpy one is Bertrand. The long, wispy one that always shows up at twilight. That's Alina. Don't laugh. This is the most social interaction you've had in weeks. You speak to them sometimes. Not full conversations. Just greetings. Little jokes. Like, "Well, Bertrand, you look like you ate too much bread again." Or, "Alina, you flirt. Quit." Showing off that sunset glow. And sometimes, "If I don't get out of here, will you remember me?" There's no reply, of course. But you pretend the breeze that sneaks in through the slit is their answer. There's something powerful about seeing the sky. Medieval prisons were often placed deep underground or behind thick walls, cutting off prisoners not just from people, but from light. That was no accident. Removing the natural world, seasons, stars, even time was part of the punishment. You weren't just isolated. You were unmoored from reality. Historians still argue whether such isolation had more psychological impact than physical torture. But you could answer that yourself, now. Without hesitation. Oh, the rack bruised your bones and twisted your joints, but it was the dark that broke your mind. The darkness and the waiting. But now, you wait under a glow. It doesn't mean hope, not quite. You're not deluded. You're still a prisoner. Still in a room with no furniture. Still drinking from a bowl that smells faintly of moss. But something's changed. You've been seen, remembered. Not by name, but as a file, a mistake. A moving piece in a slow bureaucratic chess game. And in a medieval dungeon. That's practically a coronation. One day, a guard arrives who doesn't throw the bowl. He actually hands it to you. You stare at him like he's just proposed marriage. He shrugs. You're on someone's list now. He doesn't elaborate. The gruel is thicker than usual. Less watery. And the bread comes without mold this time. You're almost suspicious. Almost. There's a rumor that circulates the upper cells, passed between coughs, muttered through the slits in the wall. A review is coming. Some sort of audit. Inspectors. Possibly clergy. Possibly nobles. No one knows. But the guards are jumpier, cleaner. Even their boots squeak now, polished for the first time in months. Someone's trying to make this place look respectable. You find it hilarious. This dungeon, respectable. You laugh so hard one night, you start coughing. You cough until tears leak down your cheeks. Until your ribs ache. Until the silence creeps back in like a guilty cat and lies across your chest. Still, the news changes something. In you. You stop lying on the floor all day. You stretch more. You eat the entire bolivan, the weird crusty edge that normally makes you gag. You clean the wall with your sleeve. Just in case. The breeze through the slit gets stronger in the evenings. Colder too. You guess it's autumn, or early winter. You press your palm to the stone under the window and imagine snow falling on. The world outside. You can't see it, but you know it's there. Somewhere beyond this castle, there are trees losing their leaves. Candles flickering in homes. Fireplaces crackling. The normal rhythm of life still hums along, indifferent too. Your absence, and you. You're a footnote. A scribbled name on parchment, waiting for someone with a stamp to say, "Oh, that one." But sometimes, footnotes get read. A week maybe more after the rumors start, something odd happens. A guard opens your door, and gestures for you too. Follow. He doesn't chain you. Doesn't say a word. You walk upstairs. So many stairs your legs start to shake. But you keep going. The air gets cooler, brighter. Until, finally, you step into a room with actual windows. Big ones, leaded glass panes, letting in daylight. Like honey, you squint, blink, tears pool at the corners of your eyes from the brightness. You haven't seen color this clearly in months. The room has a table, and a woman at it. Her robes are official blue and gold, with a symbol you don't recognize. She doesn't smile, but she nods. She says, "You'll be transferred soon." That's it. No reason, no explanation, just that. Then you're escorted back, but not to the old cell. They put you in another room. Still stone, still barred, but this one has a cot. Blanket, a candle. You don't even know how to process that. You sit on the cot. You run your hand over the scratchy wool of the blanket like it's silk. You light the candle, just to watch it flicker. You think of Remy, of the cook accused of poison, of the woman who whispered menus, of the hummingbird. You wonder where. They are now dead, freed, forgotten. But you are not forgotten. Not yet, not tonight. You lie on the cot, blanket pulled up to your chin, candle flickering by the wall, and whisper to the slit in the stone. I saw the sky today. And for once, you sleep without dreaming. You awaken before the candle burns out. The room is still and quiet. Your breath is the only sound. For a moment, you lie perfectly still, afraid to move, afraid it was all a dream, that the cot, the candle, the window, were conjured up in a fevered hallucination. But no, there it is. The blanket rough against your skin, the faint glow of sunrise through the slit in the wall, the soft warmth of your own breath curling in the cold air. You're still here, but here has changed. You sit up slowly. Your muscles protest, but not as much as they used to. That's something. You stretch carefully. Your joints crack like dry twigs. You listen for rats, for boots, for screams. None come. Just the occasional drip of water somewhere distant, and the whisper of a breeze. You walk to the window slit and press your palm against the stone. There's a streak of color in the sky. Pink. No more like amber. It's not quite sunrise, but the world is clearly preparing for it. You don't see the sun, but you feel it approaching. Funny, after all these weeks, the sky still makes you feel like a child again. Small, curious, not yet ruined. It's quiet for most of the morning. No guards, no orders. You half expect someone to come rushing in, shouting that a mistake's been made, that you're not supposed to be here, that you belong in the dark. But no one comes, so you wait. And in that waiting, you remember. You start to piece together the fragments of your old life. Your house, your village, your work, the taste of honey bread, the smell of wet bark in spring, the laughter of friends whose faces now float hazily. In your mind, you try to remember your crime, what they said you did. But it's fuzzy. Charges of heresy, harboring relics, or maybe something else entirely. The truth is, it doesn't matter anymore. Because in this place, the crime was always secondary. The being here is the punishment. Some medieval dungeons didn't need reasons. Suspicion was enough. Poverty was enough. Being in the wrong place, the wrong faith, the wrong gender, the wrong clothes enough. Justice was flexible, convenient, and often deadly. Historians still argue whether most prisoners were truly guilty, or if guilt was even the point. Eventually, the guard returns. But he's not the same as before. His beard is neatly trimmed, his uniform cleaner. He carries himself with a stiff politeness of someone trying to look official in front of someone important. "You're to be cleaned," he says. That catches you off guard. You're given a bucket, warm water, a cloth, soap that smells vaguely of lavender and dust. You're left alone to scrub yourself first time in who knows how long. You work slowly, carefully. Peeling away layers of grime feels more spiritual than physical. Like molting, you wash your face last, as if saving the best for last. The person who stares back at you in the water's reflection is a stranger, thinner, paler, but there's something in the eyes still you. Somehow later they bring clothes, not a prisoner's tunic this time, but something simple and clean. A rough shirt, breeches, leather shoes. You hesitate as you pull them on. It feels like putting on someone else's story. You wonder if this means you're being released, or paraded. Your stomach knots. The guard returns once more, motioning for you to follow. You're taken not down, but up. Up more stairs than you've ever climbed in one go. Your knees ache, your breath comes fast, but you keep moving, step after step, until the air begins to shift. Less musty, more alive. The walls grow brighter. Torches become windows, and then you emerge into a hallway bathed in morning light. Real light, wide and golden. It pours across flagstones and climbs the tapestries like ivy. The windows here aren't slits, they're full, arched things, throwing color and warmth onto the cold stone floor. You stop walking, you just stand there. A bird chirps outside. It's the first birdsong you've heard in what feels like a century. The guard clears his throat. This way. You move like you're dreaming, like your body no longer trusts itself. They lead you to a courtyard, and suddenly, the world returns: grass, trees, a fountain, the scent of horses, distant voices, actual conversation, nobles walking past in fine cloaks, servants carrying baskets, the creak of a cartwheel, and somewhere nearby, someone laughing. You feel like a ghost walking among the living. No one looks directly at you, but they see you. You can feel their eyes flick toward your ragged hair, your bony limbs, the way you flinch at sudden noises. You want to explain yourself, to tell them you weren't always this way, that you used to laugh too, but you say nothing. A man waits for you at the edge of the courtyard, a scholar's robe, balding, ink-stained hands. "We found your file," he says without preamble. "It was mislabeled, mixed in with deceased cases. You were never supposed to be in long-term holding." You blink. "We're sorry," he adds, as if the word tastes strange in his mouth. You wait for more, for an apology that actually means something. But that's all he gives you. He turns to go, then pauses. "There's transport coming, for relocation. You'll be moved to a monastery for recovery, then released." You let the word sit in your bones. It's heavy. You can't tell if it's relief or fear or both. Back in your cell, the candle has gone out. The cot is still warm from your body. You sit one last time by the window slit and look up. The clouds today are thick and moody. Bertrand is back, of course. And behind him, just barely, you catch a glimmer of blue. You whisper, "I'm leaving." Soon the wind doesn't answer. But it doesn't argue either. That night, you sleep deeply. Not because you're comfortable. Not because you're safe. But because, for the first time, your story has a next chapter. And maybe, just maybe, it's yours too, right? You leave the dungeon just before sunrise. Not in shackles. Not in a coffin, but upright. Walking, it doesn't feel triumphant. There's no music, no applause, no tearful reunion. Just you, a satchel with dry bread, and a guard who barely meets your eyes as he leads you through the iron gate. He says nothing, you say nothing. Maybe that's best. Your feet touch earth, real earth, cold, damp, and uneven. It gives a little beneath your steps. You'd forgotten how forgiving soil could be for months. The stone floor had been your entire world, flat, hard, unmoving. Now the ground shifts slightly with every step. It feels like walking on a sea. The cart is waiting a few yards away. Simple, wooden, 2 wheels. An old horse with sleepy eyes. A driver bundled in furs, one hand gripping the reins, the other holding a crust he's too busy chewing to look up. He gestures with his chin when he sees you. You, the one going east. You nod. "Climb up then. We'll get as far as the monastery." By nightfall, if the horse doesn't decide to be dramatic. You pause at the base of the cart, one hand on the frame. You look back over your shoulder. The prison tower's above, its stones soaked in shadow. The walls are rough, unchanged. You can't see the window slit where you used to sit, but you know it's there. You can still feel the chill of it on your palms. No one waves goodbye. You climb into the cart. The driver clicks his tongue, and the wheels creak to life. The horse starts moving. You rock gently with emotion, hands gripping the side, and just like that, you're leaving. The castle shrinks behind you. Slowly at first, then faster. Then it's just part of the distant ridge. Then it's gone. You don't say anything for a long time. The driver doesn't either. Instead, you focus on the world. The real, actual world. The smell of wet grass. The sound of crows in the trees. Wind that moves. Sky that stretches. It's all too much at first. Your senses are overwhelmed, like a candle suddenly flaring in a pitch-black cave. Every detail demands your attention. The color of moss, the glint of dew, the lichen on stones. It's like the whole world has been waiting for you to return. You want to cry, but you don't. Not yet. Instead, you ask, "How far is the monastery?" The driver shrugs. "Few leagues. They'll feed you. Probably shave your head. pray a lot, but you'll sleep in a bed. A bed. You nod slowly, unsure how to feel about that. You haven't slept in a real bed since ... You don't even know. You don't remember the last time you closed your eyes without fearing what might be taken from you while you slept. The road winds through hills, past villages. You don't see many people, just a farmer or two, a few goats, a monk, walking alone, muttering to himself. You don't wave. You're not ready for that. By midday, your legs cramped from sitting. The driver offers you a bit of cheese. It smells terrible and tastes worse, but you eat it anyway. Your body is still learning what food is supposed to feel like, how to chew slowly, how not to hoard every crumb. He asks your name. You hesitate, then say it out loud. It still feels foreign in your mouth. He grunts. Name's Willem. I used to ferry stones. Now I ferry people. Stones were quieter. You give a weak smile. He talks more as the day goes on, about the weather, the monastery, his sister's husband, who stole a chicken once and had to run all the way to Flanders. You just listen. Eventually, he says something that sticks. No one really gets out of prison, not up here. He taps his temple. Takes years to stop thinking like a ghost. You nod, because he's right. Your body may be free now, but your mind, still pacing that cell, still flinching at torchlight, still counting cracks in the wall, and hoping a riddle might save you. The monastery comes into view, just as the sun dips behind the hills. It's built of old, stone, ivy-cloaked, quiet. Smoke curls from a chimney. A bell tolls gently in the evening. There's a gate, but it's open. A monk stands there waiting, hood up, hands folded. As the cart slows, Willem leans toward you. They'll take care of you. Just give it time. Let the walls settle. You climb down, your knees nearly buckle, but you stay upright. The monk steps forward. He doesn't speak, just places a hand on your shoulder and guides you inside. Willem doesn't say goodbye, just turns the cart and begins the long journey. Back, you're led down a narrow path, through an archway, into a cloister garden. It's filled with herbs and night-chilled flowers. The air smells of sage and rosemary. You pass a fountain. Its trickle feels louder than the shouting guards ever did. You're given a room, a small cell, still called a cell. But this one has no locks, just a bed, a basin, a chair, a window. You sit on the bed, you touch the blanket, you breathe. There's no ceremony, no welcome feast. Just the soft whisper of quiet people, and the endless hum of healing time. That night, you sleep again. Not from exhaustion, but from release. And the last thing you hear is not a scream, it's wind in the leaves. The monastery becomes your world. Days begin with bells. Gentle tones that stir you awake rather than startle. You no longer jolt upright, clutching at dreams like they might escape you. Now, you rise slowly, stretch beneath the soft weight of a woolen blanket, and feel the ache in your joints loosen ever so slightly. There is food, twice a day. Simple things, broth, bread, apples when they have them. A monk named Brother Ewan shows you how to pour tea made from herbs that grow just outside your window. He doesn't ask your story. He just talks about the soil. The thyme loves this corner, he says one morning, but the rosemary hates the shade. You nod like that, makes sense, and it does. Somehow, the days follow a rhythm work, rest, prayer, silence. You're not expected to speak unless you want to. You barely speak for the first week. Your voice still sounds strange in your own ears. Instead, you sweep floors. You tend to the small garden. You learn to mend torn cloth. One of the older monks teaches you to copy manuscripts. Your hands tremble the first time you hold a quill. But the ink steadies you. You are learning to live again, one evening. Brother Ewan finds you in the garden, staring up at the sky. It's dusk, and the stars are just beginning to show themselves. You point at one, barely brighter than the rest. That one, you say, voice thin but sure. That was the first star I saw. From my cell, through the slit in the stone. He nods, a good one to hold on to. You don't know what to say to that, but it stays with you. Some nights, You whisper that star's name, a name you gave it in secret. Not Alina, not Bertrand. This one is yours. A name only you know. Historians still argue whether survivors of medieval dungeons truly ever healed. There were no terms for trauma then, no books on psychological scars. But the records speak softly, fragments, in personal letters, in hesitant testimonies, in sudden bursts of art or poetry from those who made it back. Recovery was not expected, but it happened, and now slowly it's happening to you. The dreams don't vanish. Some nights, you still jolt awake, convinced you're back underground. You wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, clawing at the blanket like it might be straw. But the candle is always there, and the window, and the silence that no longer feels like punishment. One day, a visitor arrives, not for you, specifically. A traveling scribe, come to deliver scrolls. But when he hears your name, he pauses. There's a list, he says, of those wrongly held. They're still updating it. Yours might be on it soon. You don't reply, because it doesn't matter as much anymore. You don't need the outside world to validate what you already know. You survived. They give you the option to leave, to walk away, to return to your old life. You decline, not forever, just for now. You like the stillness. You like the routine. You like knowing that tomorrow there will be bread and light. And someone who doesn't hurt you. You stay in the monastery through the winter. The first snow catches you off guard. You wake one morning to find the garden blanketed in white. You step outside barefoot, just to feel it. It burns, but in a good way. In a real way. You stand there for minutes, toes numb, breath fogging the air, and actually laugh, for the first time since before the dungeon. Later that night, you sit by the fire and write. Just a sentence, a memory, the smell of damp iron, the silence. After a scream, the way your name sounded when you finally said it again. You don't know if it's a beginning or an ending, but it's yours. One evening, a novice sits beside you. He's young, wide-eyed, nervous. He says he's heard whispers of your story. He asks, was it as bad as they say? You think for a long time, then you say worse. He flinches, but you add, and yet, here I am. The next morning, you light a candle and place it in the chapel window. A habit now, one small flame for each of the people you left behind. For Remy, for the woman with the menus, for the cook with the poisoned stew. For yourself, one flame for each soul who didn't make it out. Time stretches. The dungeon becomes a memory not distant, but no longer raw, like a scar that only hurts when the rain comes. And one day, without planning to, you write the word freedom on a scrap of parchment. You fold it, tuck it into the hem of your robe. You don't need to read it. You've already lived it now, as you lie there, warm and still. Let that final image linger in your mind. A quiet monastery garden. Snow gently falling onto stone pathways. The faint glow of candlelight dancing behind stained glass windows. And a figure just you sitting beneath an old tree, hands steady, heart calm, eyes turned upward, toward a sky no longer out of reach. Let your breath slow with that image, in through your nose, and out through your mouth. Again, slower now. There is no dungeon here, no shouts, no darkness, just earth beneath your body, sky above your thoughts, and the gentle hum of a world continuing its quiet rhythm. The story's over, but the quiet isn't. You made it through the silence, through the stone, and cold, and time, and now, there's only stillness. Let your fingers relax, your shoulders drop, your jaw unclench. You're safe now, not because the world is gentle, but because you have become gentle with yourself. You might drift soon, you might not. It's okay tonight. The dungeon has no hold on you, only this bed, this moment, this breath. Sleep if you like, dream if you must. You've earned every second.